Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here, welcoming you all to celebrate Fighting Game Thursday. Since I first started making videos in this format, one game has been perhaps requested for me to cover more than any other. And it is a surprising title that I imagine would not be the first fighting game that would come to mind when most of the gaming public think of the fighting game genre. Today we are going to be looking at Capcom's other crossover fighting game. A game that, although is clearly well liked within my little niche on YouTube, a game that I would imagine many people do not even realise exists. As the title of the video suggests, we are of course looking at Tatsunoko vs Capcom Ultimate All-Stars. In fact, the average Westerner would probably be thinking right now, what the bloody hell is a Tatsunoko anyway? One of the many questions I hope to answer within this video. Anyway, let's get started. This is the mad story of Tatsunoko vs Capcom, the other crossover fighting game. Yeah! Previously on this YouTube channel, I have taken you all on an odyssey, slowly making our way through looking at every Capcom crossover fighting title. Starting at ground zero, we originally looked at X-Men vs Street Fighter, but now we have been on a journey together looking at games chronologically from release, from the Marvel vs Capcom series to the Capcom vs SNK games. With two great crossover series under Capcom's belt, they left fans wondering what exciting crossover we would get next. Capcom would soon answer this question in 2004 when they decided to release an Capcom vs Capcom game. This title, which we looked at in depth last week, known as Capcom Fight and Evolution, was a shoddily put together rush job made from the crumbling remains of the cancelled 3D fighting game created by the company the previous year, known as Capcom Fighting All-Stars. The cancellation of Fighting All-Stars, followed by the failings of Capcom Fighting Evolution, meant that this would be Capcom's last crossover fighting game for quite some time. And the period Capcom had gone through of putting 4 or 5 different fighting games out a year seemed to be over, leading to somewhat of a low period fighting game wise for the company. In many ways the name was ironic, as although the title was known as Capcom Fighting Evolution, it contributed towards devolving the company's fighting game brand. Prior to all of this, as you will be aware from my previous uploads, Street Fighter 3 was not the cash cow the company had been hoping for either, and was a massive commercial failure, with the long-awaited sequel and its updates only selling a pitiful 80,000 units on the Sega Dreamcast. The fighting game golden age for Capcom seemed to be over, with both the Street Fighter brand and the crossover fighting game brand both becoming exhausted. By 2004, crowds of geeks were gathering at competitive fighting game events like EVO, but the average gamer had moved on to newer and more innovative gaming ventures, and if they did fancy a fighting game fix, they would simply power up Street Fighter 2 for a buzz of nostalgic quality. This of course would all change drastically with the release of Street Fighter 4 in the arcades in 2008, a game that with its upgrades and reiterations would go on to sell over 9 million units, making it Capcom's most popular fighting game since the release of the legendary Street Fighter 2. We will cover what led to all of this on the channel soon, maybe even next week. Let's see how I feel. But today, let's put our focus elsewhere. Street Fighter 4 was not the only new Capcom fighting game released in the arcades that year. We also got the release of Tatsunoko vs Capcom, a brand new crossover fighting game. Let's imagine you are the average Western gamer watching this video. You will notice a lot of your Capcom favourites mixed with a bunch of spandex-clad superheroes and massive fighting robots. The latter examples are obviously examples of representation from the Tatsunoko brand, so let's quickly cover who Tatsunoko actually are. Tatsunoko are a Japanese production company originally established in 1962. The anime pioneers' first big hit was a TV series released in 1965 known as Space Ace. Since then, the company have gone on to produce countless anime TV shows and movies, which is the source material from where roster members in the game on the Tatsunoko side of things originate from. who we shall run through individually when we get to the character segment of this video. Speaking of the game's characters, past the game's introduction, we are exposed to the crossover lineup of Capcom and Tatsunoko fighters further when we reach the character select screen. But hold on a minute players, on the select screen you select not one but two fighters, instantly pleasing Teddy Long. Holla holla holla! Straight away you will notice that this game varies greatly graphically from any previous Capcom vs fighting game, as all the characters in the game are fully rendered in 3D. Fights take place within a 2.5D environment. This is due to 3D looking characters being restricted to a two-dimensional plane. As you would have gathered from selecting two fighters earlier, like all the other Capcom vs games, the title features tag team based combat, with the obvious goal of depleting opponents' life bars. If a player selects two fighters, they are completely switchable during matches. However, a completely new mechanic is introduced in this game with the addition of alternatively selecting one of two giant characters the game has. These two bigger, more powerful characters can be chosen individually to use instead of a two-person team. Powerful team moves can also be performed by pairs of two. These are executed when the character not in play is called upon to perform an assist. The arcade version of this game has a control scheme consisting of a joystick and a multi-button layout. However, the console controls would be simplified, which we shall cover more on shortly. In all versions of the game, in addition to assists, characters can perform light, medium and strong attacks, and these attacks can be strung together to perform combos. On top of this, characters can perform what is known as universal techniques. These are more powerful special attacks that require more complex control inputs. Further from this, other input combinations can also be used to perform hyper combos and team hyper combos, which vary in damage depending on how full the player's hyper combo gauge is. Going back to universal techniques, these can also be used to launch opponents upwards to perform air combos. Universal techniques also include the rock combo, which does significant damage but reduces the using player's health, and the Mega Crash technique, which also drains the user's life bar, but puts a temporary barrier around the player. So that is basically how the combat in the game is executed. So now, before we move on to talking about the characters within this game and the game's console ports, let us take a look at the title's development history. The ball of the production of this game began to roll in 2006 when Tatsunoko themselves approached Capcom with the suggestion of creating a game using their character library. Ryoto Nitsuma, producer at Capcom, was instantly interested in creating a fighting game and quickly got everyone on board at the two companies to agree to use Tatsunoko within the next Capcom vs fighting title. This project was a particularly interesting one, as there would be a 7-year gap between the release of this title and the last true crossover published by the company, Capcom vs SNK 2. The research and development team working on this title began work on the project in parallel with Street Fighter 4, with the ambitious aim of bringing Capcom fighting games back to the mainstream market. This was hoped to be achieved through slightly lowering the barrier for entry with the game, as the company had noticed an unprofitable trend where only extremely hardcore fans were still playing fighting games. These people took fighting games a lot more serious than those who made up the market where the money actually was. Street Fighter 3 is one of the primest examples of a game that suffers from such an issue. Through the time period, fighting games were dropping in popularity. The casual market though was growing larger than ever before, with the Nintendo Wii proving to the world that there was a huge market out there for more simplistic games. For this reason, the arcade games development would be shifted with a future console release on the Nintendo Wii in mind. Capcom would hire a development house known as 18, who they would task with the development of this game. Nitsuma is quoted to have stated, 18, Capcom's hired developer, took on the job in early 2007. Tatsunoko vs Capcom's design was a departure from the complex attack systems of the Street Fighter series, and of certain Versus titles. The game is built around a simplified 3-button attack system. It was inspired by the control systems commonly used by both the Versus series and the Wii, which allows intricate moves to be performed with basic control inputs. The game's release would finally be announced in May of 2008, with a release set for the Japanese arcades. The arcade cabinets contained boards that used proprietary hardware based on the Nintendo Wii. The game was 70% ready by September of that year, with a Japanese release on the Wii also announced and confirmed. The game would eventually hit Japanese arcades in December of that same year. When creating this game, although Tatsunoko characters could be nominated by Capcom to use, they soon realised that they faced limitations, as certain characters would entail licensing issues that would prevent them from being used. Some characters were even rejected for use by Tatsunoko, without even explanations given. Nitsuma states, "We weren't privy to a lot of their decision making process. They didn't share a lot of reasons with us. When they said no, and we asked why, they wouldn't tell us, but would give us another suggestion. They disallowed characters from Samurai Pizza Cats, despite the high number of fan requests for the latter. The characters who were ultimately chosen were generally characters the team enjoyed during their youth. Capcom also opted to have a roster with a good balance of male and female fighters, as well as a hero-heavy lineup as opposed to villains. Once all the fighters were cleared for use, they could then begin designing a roster of balanced fighters. With regards to the game's fighting lineup, let us now take a bit of the time to run through the members of this game's roster. Let's keep it simple by first running through Capcom's offerings. For the first time in history, the roster in this Capcom vs game was not Street Fighter heavy. I feel this could be down to two possible reasons, or simply a combination of both. My first thought is that it could be because Street Fighter 4 was in development simultaneously, and they did not want to overdose the consumer on Street Fighter again. Alternatively, maybe the company just never had the same faith in the brand that they once did. Despite all of this, we have Chun-Li and Ryu, who are most synonymous with Street Fighter 2, and Alex is selectable of Street Fighter 3 infamy. Morrigan from the Darkstalker series is present as expected, and fantastically, Batsu is present, flying the flag for the rival school's franchise. From the Mega Man series we have Roll returning, joined absurdly by Mega Man Volnut from Mega Man Legends, which is quite surprising really, as any sane person hates Mega Man Legends, yuck. But I guess this is compensated somewhat with the addition of Zero from Mega Man X, the greatest Mega Man series. In addition to these characters, we have the superhero Beautiful Joe from the stylistic, popular at the time beat-em-up Beautiful Joe, a game that was artistically the most stylistic in the genre since Comic Zone. Perhaps I should maybe look back at this game on here soon. On the more obscure side of things, we have Saki from the hybrid quiz game and dating sim known as Quiz Nanero Dreams. The Japanese are such odd perverts. The other three representatives are characters from newer Capcom releases that came out in a similar time frame to the game. These include Frank West from Dead Rising, PTX-40A from Lost Planet, and Keijin no Soki from Onimusha, who all illustrate that Capcom were no longer mainly leaning on characters from their fighting franchises. That rounds up everyone on the Capcom side of things, which means now it's time to look at Tatsunoko's fighters. Full disclosure here, I know absolutely nothing about anime, with of course the exception of the greatest ones ever, such as Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. You know, the ones normal people watched. But nonetheless, here is my idiot's guide to the character lineup representing Tatsunoko. First we have Ken the Eagle, June the Swan and Joe the Condor, from a property known as Gatchaman. The show is an animated franchise about a 5-member superhero squad. If you are around my age, you will probably vaguely be able to remember an English dub of the show on Fox Kids known as Eagle Riders. Although the original series of the show aired in Japan in 1972 and was first adapted in the English-speaking world as an adaptation entitled Battle of the Planets back in 1978. Then we have characters from a property known as Kashan. Kashan himself is an android with a human consciousness. Originally a person, he turned himself into an android to hunt down and destroy the robots that have taken over his world. The show first aired in Japan in 1973 but received a live-action reboot in 2004. Next we have Polymer from Hurricane Polymer. Once again, this is another Japanese superhero. Originally a regular police officer, Takeshi obtained from a scientist a new artificial polymer, Polymet, that was far stronger than steel. With this polymet, Takeshi transformed himself into Hurricane Polymer, a costumed hero who fights for justice. This 1974 show was remade in 1996 and later released in English on VHS in 1998. We have a range of characters from a franchise known as Yatterman. The show aired from 1977 to 1979 but would see a remake in 2008, the same year this game came out. The plot of the show revolves around a mysterious stone known as the Skull Stone, which has pieces scattered all over Earth. Once all pieces are assembled, the stone reveals the location of the world's largest gold deposit. Playable characters in this game include masked heroes Yatterman 1 and Yatterman 2, whose goal in the series is to stop the stone falling into the wrong hands. Another playable character in this game includes one of the show's villains. The Ronjo is an attractive blonde who leads the Dorombo gang in locating the Daruko stone. Further from this we have Hakushon. He is a genie from the anime The Genie Family, which first aired in 1970. Hakushon grants wishes but consistently messes them up due to his own extreme clumsiness. The show was localised to English as Bob the Bottle in 1992. Karas is a playable character from a more modern Tatsunoko property simply known as Karas that saw release in 2005. The show is a horror story with a vengeance theme. The protagonist, Karas, is on a quest to slaughter Mikaris to recover the body part of his murdered lover. Pretty dark stuff really. Tekkaman is a character from 1975, a space knight who received an English adaptation in 1984. The show is set at the dawn of the 21st century, and scientists are on the hunt for a second Earth. This search is hindered though due to issues with aliens, but a scientist designs the Tech Setter system, designed to combat the aliens by augmenting a human with a certain wavelength into a Tekkaman, giving them enhanced strength abilities, resulting in this character right here. The show would receive an even more popular sequel set 10 years later, known as Tekkaman Blade, which would air in 1992. The Earth is under attack by aliens once more, and the even cooler looking Tekkaman Blade is the star of this property. We also have Ippatsuman from a 1982 show, Gyakuten Ippatsuman. Ippatsuman is the pilot of a super robot. The show sounds like it was about big business who lease out powerful robots, with notorious villains being top executives who work at the more questionable firm. Last but not least we have Gold Lightan, a huge gold robot from the 1981 show Golden Warrior Gold Lightan. The story is about a young boy named Hiro Takai, who finds a gold lighter which turns out to be the giant Golden Warrior Gold Lightan, who has the mission to save the Earth from an invasion by King Ibalda. I hope that gives you a brief explanation of who all these very Japanese fighters are, and I am sure some more Weeby members watching today can shed even further light on this crazy roster. But as you can see from all of this, Tatsunoko vs Capcom offers a very, very different roster to any Capcom fighting game released previously. Out of all of the characters featured within this video, some of them are actually exclusive to each of the 3 different versions of this game. The first 2 versions of the game were released exclusively in Japan, which makes a lot of sense considering how Japanese the character lineup is. The first 2 versions, both known as Tatsunoko vs Capcom Cross-Generation Heroes, obviously existed in 2 different forms, an arcade version and a Wii version. Apart from a slightly different character roster, the Wii version of the title contains an exclusive minigame system for each character to participate in, which adds a little more variety to the title. The home version of the game also includes all the tropes of a fighting game of that type. There is a regular arcade mode, a survival mode, a time attack and versus mode. Everything you would expect really from a game of this breed. You also obtain money throughout the game so that you can purchase a range of features including unlockable characters, giving the game an extra edge of replayability. As mentioned though, sadly both of these versions of the game would never leave Japan, but the West along with the rest of the world would finally receive Tatsunoko vs Capcom Ultimate All-Stars at a later date. On May 6, 2009, Capcom listed 2 mystery games as part of their Electronic Entertainment Expo 2009 lineup. Nintendo Power magazine revealed Capcom Mystery Game number 1 to be the North American localization of Tatsunoko vs Capcom Cross Generation of Heroes, with the new subtitle Ultimate All-Stars. The game was playable at E3 of that year, with European and Australian release dates also announced later that same year. There was originally no intention to release the game outside of Japan, but the game got such a positive reaction from fans that it became a must for the company. The release was a tedious process for Capcom, as many Tatsunoko property rights were held by Time Warner outside of Japan, and licensing in North America and Europe were often held by different rights holders. This tedium would lead to time constraints issues that led Capcom to replacing the character-specific mini-games with Ultimate All-Shooters, an expansion of the PTX-40A minigame. An official launch event for Tatsunoko vs Capcom Ultimate All-Stars was held at the Nintendo World Store in the Rockefeller Center on January 23, 2010, featuring autograph signings by Nitsuma, giveaways, competitions and playable demo kiosks. Certain versions of Tatsunoko vs Capcom Ultimate All-Stars were bundled with a Mad Catz arcade stick, which I must say looks particularly spiffing. In regards to the popularity of a very Japanese game in the West, Capcom's community manager Seth Killian expressed satisfaction with the North American sales of Ultimate All-Stars. Tatsunoko vs Capcom certainly beats the initial expectations. It didn't set any land speed records, but it was a success, Killian stated. And that really says something considering that we're talking about a game that was not only never coming out, but has a title that most people can't even pronounce. In regards to the game's overall reception, Famitsu would score the game's original incarnation a solid 8 out of 10, praising the game for both the character lineup and fighting game mechanics. When the later worldwide version of the game was released, Tatsunoko vs Capcom Ultimate All-Stars would also receive positive reviews, with an average score of 85% on review aggregate sites Metacritic and Game Rankings. The game would also receive a lot of praise for successfully balancing accessibility and depth. GameSpot would state that its use of fewer buttons may seem less complex, but this simplicity belies the depth of each character's moveset. Eurogamers stated that compared to the separate buttons for punches and kicks in Marvel vs Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes, Tatsunoko vs Capcom's streamlined approach was moderately easy to learn. The game is a slightly slower and more user-friendly Marvel without losing the ability to pull off crazy 50+ hit combos. Ben Kuchera of Ars Technica wrote that its over-the-top attacks can be huge colourful screen-filling blasts of light and movement, and that combos flash across the screen, claiming you landed billions of points of damage. 1UP.com found that each character played in a vastly different way. There are characters who take advantage of sheer speed and long-range moves, others who use momentum to apply pressure to opponents, and those who rely on a single opportune moment to deal vast amounts of damage. GamePro contrasted the game with Marvel vs Capcom 2, contributing that every combatant in Tatsunoko feels carefully designed to be unique, intriguing, and most importantly, worth investing time in mastering. The game's soundtrack also proved popular with Game Daily, highlighting its fantastic mix of strong techno tunes and dramatic battle themes. So now that you have watched this video, I hope that you have gained a clearer picture of what Tatsunoko vs Capcom is, and why it appeared as a constant exclusive for the Nintendo Wii of all things. The game was part of Capcom's new direction to get fighting games back into the hands of the mainstream, and back in 2006 to 2007, the Wii seemed like the most sensible way to achieve this. Despite all of this though, Tatsunoko is still not a well-known brand in the West. Due to this, the release of this game still went completely over many Westerners' heads, in spite of the game's high quality and playability. Also, as of November 7, 2012, Capcom USA's Senior Vice President, Christian Svensson, revealed that Capcom's rights with Tatsunoko had lapsed meaning Capcom is no longer authorised to sell Tatsunoko vs Capcom physically or digitally, which is why we have never seen this pop up anywhere since the Wii's initial release. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the mad story of Tatsunoko vs Capcom, Capcom's other crossover game. Why not share with us in the comment section what you thought of this game, or if you have never played this one, tell us why. If you want to help assist me in helping this little channel grow, then why not like, subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive multiple videos on gaming history every single week. At present I am uploading 2 new videos weekly. Finally, my channel is partially funded by the generous donations I receive via Patreon. Patrons can earn a credit and a shout out at the end of these videos. These people make working full time on YouTube just that little bit less scary, so I would like to thank all of you very much for that. Huge shoutouts go out to Carl Johnson, Sebastian Velez, JD Robbins, Synth Spaces, Andrew Bazansky, Asobi Kwang DX, Michael Baker, Tom Elliott, Computer Man, Antonio Rodriguez, Craig Jenkins, Daniel Daly, RetroVersion.com, House of Pated, Dan Barlow Jr., Joel, and all of my other patrons. Yeah!